In today's episode of Elephants, Chloe and I talk with our friend Laura Sagers, who owns Rise Pilates here in Melbourne, about her journey of learning business on the fly, and then when COVID hit, how she adapted her studio to run online classes and what she's learned going through COVID and coming out the other side of that process. And so this is a real transformational journey and a lot of golden nuggets in there about teaching as well as running a studio, hiring and finding staff, how to find a job if you're an instructor. Lots of great gold in there. I know you're going to love it. Hey, Chloe.
Hey, Raph.
Hey, Laura.
Hi, Raph. Hi, Chloe.
Hey, Laura.
Well, isn't this awesome?
This is awesome. We've got a fantastic guest today, Laura Sagers,
Thank you for having me.
or Sags as I call you.
Yes, you do. I love it.
Yeah. Well, so how are you today, Chloe? Yeah. Welcome back from holidays.
Thank you. I'm good. I think I'm still in that just finding my feet again. First time having 2 weeks off in a very, very long time. I'm not counting Christmas because I was busy moving house. So, yeah, it was really good. Spent lots of time with my cats and my family and Laura's dogs.
Yeah.
So, yeah, had a great time.
I'm glad to hear it. And you sound nice and relaxed too.
Yeah, I'm relaxed. How are you, Ralph?
Oh, fuck, I'm awesome, yeah.
That's a pretty typical response from Ralph.
Yes.
You concerned if it's not an awesome there? Yeah. Yeah. How are you, Laura?
Yeah.
I'm great. I'm so excited to be here. I'm a long-time listener, first-time speaker. I was going to say first-time caller, but I'm physically here with you both, which is awesome.
Well, it's the first time having you on Pilates Elephants, but it's not the first time, Raf, interviewing you.
No.
We've got a couple of, I would say, two of our most popular interviews that you've done, Raf, and they'd be on, you can find those on our...
We'll link to them in the show
link
notes.
to the show notes. There we go. There we go. Back before we had a podcast, there was a blog, and you're also, your interviews are in our coursework. So you're a household name around here.
Thanks. Way to boost me up.
Because, so those interviews are really actually quite pertinent to what we're talking about today, because the first one I talked with you, I think it was like a week before or after or something, you opened your studio.
Literally a week into opening Rise, my Reformer Pilates studio in Essendon, Melbourne, Australia.
Was that 2018 or 2019 or something like that?
2018, the very start of January 2018, yes. And so we're almost approaching 5 years at the studio. And then I remember, Raf, we had our second interview / chat. It was pretty much 1 year exactly to the day. So it was 12 months later. And it's really cool to look back and have that documented, because even for myself, like some of the things that we spoke about, you forget those little things and how it, like you can kind of always remember how it felt and little things kind of pop up into your head. But yeah, to have that documented and to be able to look back on, it's pretty cool. Yeah.
And so now, 5 years later, you're a seasoned veteran studio owner and you've come out alive the other side of COVID.
Come out alive, the other side of COVID. Whew.
Your studio is alive, right?
Yes.
You've still got a viable business.
Yes.
And so, you're wearing some battle scars, no doubt, but I'm sure you've learned a heap of stuff, not just from COVID, but also just from operating a studio for a bunch of years.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So I'd love to get, and I'm sure our listeners would love to hear, firstly, just like, if you think back to those initial conversations that we had, like when I remember our first conversation where you were like, oh, it's been so easy, everything's so great, it's just fallen in my lap, everyone says it's hard, but I don't know what they're talking about,
Yes.
and so what's, can you just talk us through like what's the basic setup, of Rise? What's your
Yes.
main business? How many machines do you have? All of that.
Yes.
And how many people working for you, etc. And then what have you learned? What does Laura of 2021 know that Laura of January 2018 was yet to learn?
Yes. Okay. A hell of a lot. I'm not going to lie. But yeah, going back to that very first interview, it was, I think at the time too, I underestimated how much growth I'd had prior to opening the studio. And at the time when I went to open, it did feel so natural and easy because I'd put in the hard yards to get to that place to make it feel like that. Like I had already written 5 business plans before I opened. So like little things like that I kind of probably didn't take into consideration that I had been mentally prepping and doing bits and pieces to get to that state of feeling like, oh yeah, I'm doing it because I've actually put in the work to do it. And yeah, then to go 12 months later where you learn all the other things along the way and it's not all sunshine and roses. So yeah, jumping forward to COVID.
So sorry, just first, just for those out in the world who don't know what Rise is, just tell us a little bit about Rise.
Yeah. Sorry. So I have a Reformer Pilates studio. It's a small boutique studio. We have renovated a few times over the years. I started with 8 machines. I ended up with a dual studio. I think that was in the second interview. And that actually didn't work. That was a really big learning curve as a studio owner it worked for the clients and it worked for the instructors and it worked for the coaches. So do you mean you
had 2 rooms?
I had 2 rooms. So we ended up having a room of 10 machines and a room of 6 machines. And yeah, how we were, our price structure and how I was operating it from that side, it didn't work. And it worked for the clients, like I just mentioned, and it was great having 2 instructors on at a time. But yeah, when your accountant says, hey, it's not working, you kind of have to make some big changes. So I ended up renovating the studio so that I could fit more machines into the one room. And yeah, we have kind of we've kept renovating and improving the space to make it as profitable and as, like inclusive and smooth as possible so that we're not overcomplicating things.
How many reformers are in the...
So we have now grown to, we got up to 13, but with social distancing over COVID in the last 12 months, it has jumped from 10 and now I've got 12 back in to just to make sure social distancing, like we can get to 13 again, definitely, but just to take into consideration what's happening, we've stuck to 12.
When I ran my studio, we started out with something very similar. We started out with this huge lounge area. It was reception. It was a great place for people, third space for people to congregate and meet and hang out. It was so warm and welcoming. And then a couple of years in, we realised, why aren't we making any money? And then we realised, actually the revenue generating space in this whole building of 400 square metres is like 80 square metres of this Reformer studio.
Yes.
And then we've got this 120 square metre lounge that we're just paying like $300 a square metre for per year. That's just literally generating no revenue for us. And it's like, we've got this tiny little engine in this great big car,
Yeah.
And so we did multiple renovations over the next 3 or 4 years, and each one of them basically expanded the footprint of the Reformer studio and contracted the footprint of the non-revenue, the lounge and the change rooms and all of that got smaller and smaller and smaller until at the end it was like, now we've got a business that's generating revenue.
Because it's all well and good to have like those beautiful spaces and like community and connections, one of my biggest philosophies in running a business. But if you don't have a business for them to come to, kind of doesn't work. Yeah.
So when you say you renovated to improve profitability, that's what you mean, right? You
Yeah.
expanded your reformer
Expanded the
capacity.
reformer studio, and the space, brainstormed how we can actually make use of the space to actually make profit.
Because, and depends on how many classes you have per week on the schedule and stuff, but basically, some super rough back of the envelope, math, if you're charging $20 per class and you're running, say, 50 classes a week, which is a pretty small timetable for a studio, well, and if you can fill one reformer, 50 times a week at $20 a class, that's $1,000 a week.
Yep.
Times 50 weeks a year is $50,000 of additional revenue. So you're going from 12 to 13.
Yep.
That's $50,000 extra in your bank at the end of the year if you can put a bum on that reformer. And your expenses increase basically zero, right?
Yes.
I mean, you've got to buy the reformer, but then you don't have any extra expenses for staffing, marketing, nothing. It's all extra profit.
Precisely.
Right? And so the difference between, 10 reformers in the room and 13 is freaking huge.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's where we got to right before COVID hit. I think also too, you asked me to mention staff and how many classes, that kind of stuff. So I have 10 instructors, 10 or 11 at the minute. They all do minimal.
So sorry, can you just talk us through the snapshot of like the moment before the Titanic hit the iceberg?
Yes.
Like March the 1st,
Where
2020.
we were all like carefree and hugging each other all the time and hanging out. And
So we backtrack.
Yeah.
Oh, let's go February. Just had my birthday, had a nice little holiday. Everyone was going out for dinner. We're all going to Pilates. Yeah.
All right, yeah. So talk us through, the snapshot of February 2020. So
Yep.
you've got 13 reformers.
13
in the
reformers.
space. How many
in the
how many
space.
team members have you got?
I have 10 to around 10, given some cover regularly. I still include them as part of the team as much as possible because they're covering regularly. So between 10 to 12, we have 75 classes on the schedule a week, 7 days a week, 6 a.m. Last class finishes at around 8:30 in the evening, Saturday, Sunday. So we are all...
And in Australia, I mean, I know these things are different around the world, but in Australia, and I know at your studio, the arrangement is that basically the customers pay you, the studio,
Yes.
and then you pay the instructor. So it's the
Correct.
instructors don't rent space in the studio or anything.
No.
It's like they're employees.
Yes.
That, you do the marketing, you bring the customers in, and
Bring the people.
the
Yep.
instructor's job is just to show up and teach their class and care and, bring those customers back next time.
Exactly, precisely. So that was our setup prior to COVID, and it was all going pretty good. And I was actually going into the 4th year. Even reflecting now, I feel like that 4th year didn't really happen. But yeah, it was going into the 4th year, and I was actually just starting to get to that profitable state in running a business where I'd kind of nutted it out over the last leading up to that 4th year, and we were just starting to make it flow, make it a bit of an impact.
So all right, so here we are in February 2020, and you've got this, really smoothly running studio, and you're looking around going, I think I'm starting to get the hang of this, running a studio thing, like there's money in my bank account, the clients are happy, I've got a great team, things are running smoothly, it's not like crisis clinic every day,
Yes.
And so, all right, so what were the big lessons that you learned over the preceding kind of couple of years? Because obviously one of them was like, okay, squeeze more reformers into the studio,
Yep.
right? That's a big lesson.
Yep.
And each reformer for you at 75 classes a week
Yep.
is $75,000 a year if you can fill it.
Yep.
All right, and so that's a big thing. What else did you learn?
I think learning to let go. I think the more you can kind of let go of what you do allows more time to grow. And I love teaching. Teaching's always been my number one. That's how I got into it. That's why I opened a business essentially in the first place, because I love teaching. But you can't teach all the classes when you're trying to operate a business. That's just, you kind of change hats. And same with being all over the admin and all over the marketing and all over the everything, all different. Cleaning I got rid of, that was happy. I think in like the first 4 weeks I had cleaners at the studio. I'm not going to lie, that was one of my top priorities to let go of. But yeah, so
I'm pretty sure I have seen you doing some plumbing though.
Oh yeah, actually, that's a hat that you just can't avoid. Sometimes you've got to be
unclog toilets.
Yep, electrician, roof, whatever things, roof tile fixer.
Yeah, because when you arrive at the studio and there's a leak, and then you ring up the plumber and they're like,
it
we can be there
24 hours.
Tuesday week or
Longer.
something.
Yeah.
We
You're
need
like,
this fixed now.
No, especially when you're going through a real estate as well. But there's like a third party, so it's a real estate. Then the
Get 3
trade
quotes
person.
and we'll get back to you in a week. Sort of
I'm like,
thing.
I don't have time to wait for that toilet to get fixed. No one else is going to come and do it for you, so you end up doing it yourself purely because you need it fixed.
Yeah.
So sometimes, yeah, as a business owner, you do just have to roll up your sleeves and do that. I'm glad you brought that up, Chloe.
It was a cute photo.
Yeah, I still had my hair all like
Yeah. She's
didn't look like a plumber.
I'm seeing you in kind of a Stepford Wives 1950s thing, but with a big
That's
toilet
exactly
plunger.
how it was. Yeah.
Pretty much.
Just getting shit done, literally.
All right, so you're
God.
letting go of teaching progressively, so that you can focus on growing the business, like focusing on
Yes.
marketing and running the team
And because at the end of the day, when it's your own business, you can't employ somebody to do that for you either, unless you do go to a business coach or have big bucks to spend to have somebody to come in to run your business for you.
Yep.
So essentially that is my job. So if I don't have time to do my job, like you do realize along the way that if you're not steering the boat, you're going to crash. So you need to prioritize the tasks that need to get done, the things that only you can do, and then get other people to do the jobs that they want to do. And then there's people out there, there's like my instructors are phenomenal, and that doesn't mean that I'm not phenomenal and I'm not a great teacher or anything. You've got great people out there. Like, why don't you need to let go to give opportunity to grow? Same with admin. I personally don't really like doing admin, but I like being across the admin, and I think I felt stepping away from teaching, it was still a connection to the studio and the clients that I could still foster in that avenue. But again, I don't have time to do that, and there are people out there who are phenomenal at it and genuinely love doing it. So it's been a growth in my realization that even though I don't like doing a job, there's other people that like and are fucking awesome at doing the job. Yeah, so letting go to prioritize what you need to do and what only you can do.
So you opened a studio because you love teaching.
Yeah, and now I'm not teaching. No, I am.
And then you
Sure, you're never going to give up your Saturdays.
No, I'm going to keep my Saturday mornings. I still teach.
But then you over time, you came to realise that actually opening a studio or running a studio is itself a skill set and a job.
Yeah.
And it's not the same job as being a Pilates teacher.
Precisely. Yeah. And it took a long time for that realisation to occur.
Was there a moment where it kind of dawned on you?
I think at that point where I realised I needed to change the studio space to make it more profitable. I think I think it kind of went hand in hand in that setting, because when you're told, okay, you need to do something, otherwise it's not going to be here, you kind of jump pretty quick to go, okay, how can we problem solve here?
So talk us through, just before we move on to talking about COVID, but talk us through that, because my suspicion, having been a studio owner and been through a very similar trajectory as you, I started out teaching all the classes and doing, all the things, and pretty soon went through that same set of realizations. But also just, I know a lot of studio owners, and I see a lot of people going through that same, path. And I wonder, what were the signs that you recognised, now with hindsight, that you were like holding on too tight to that teaching role and thinking like, oh, if only I just teach more classes or teach better classes, that'll fix all my problems. where in reality, what you need to do is teach less classes and get the marketing under control or whatever it might be.
I think looking back in hindsight, I don't think there was a specific moment, but I think just getting to a point where you're feeling so run down and stressed that you just go, I can't keep doing this, it's too much, where you kind of get to that point where you almost feel like you hit a bit of a rock bottom, where you're like, I genuinely love doing what I'm doing here, but I shouldn't be feeling like this. It shouldn't.
Like a burnout
burnout, essentially.
Been there.
Because you just can't do it. You can't teach 6 classes, do the admin, come back and teach another 4 like that. Yeah. And I have a son.
We'll put him
family.
To work.
So it gets to a point where there's like a lot going on, and I would say in any studio owner's life, that you just go, okay, we just can't keep doing, we can't keep going like this. Speaking we, as if there's other studio owners.
I'm sure plenty of studio owners have felt like that, and I'm sure spoken to a lot of instructors who have gone through the ebbs and flow of burnout as well.
I think part of the letting go is having the right people around you to let go to, and I think where, even though some studio owners may be feeling like that, you kind of go, I don't know what to give first, and I don't know if there might not be the right people turning up at the interviews, or there might not be the people that you've handed it to in the past haven't quite picked up what you're putting down, or like you're just not gelling to make it work. So I think it does come back to having the right people around you and knowing what to let go of first. And I think that will be really individual to each scenario, where someone may need to let go of teaching a bit more, and it might be finding your instructors, and my biggest learning there is also to give people a go, and a lot of the time it comes down to communication and just being open. And I know you guys are all over radical candor.
Sure.
And just being really transparent of what your needs are in the business and your expectations, and then also being open to hearing how they are, how they're going in the role, and how you can kind of, I think there's always a fine line with everything, that like sometimes you do get to a point where it's just not working, but I think giving people a go to work with them to get them to that place where you can go, yep, you've got it, we're on a roll.
All right, this is something I want to unpack, and I said we're going to go into COVID, but there's just some really gold in there. And so, speaking as somebody, I feel like I've been through a similar journey, and I've got a fucking incredible team, of whom one of whom is sitting across, in fact 2 of whom now, are sitting across the table.
Spoiler alert! Laura Sagers
I'm
is
so
going to be a trainer for Breathe.
Hello, new bosses.
And so, I've been exactly, what you described. Like, I've just feeling like run down, burnt out, thinking like, well, I started this thing because I love doing this, and now I'm hating it and feeling trapped by it.
Yep.
And then also I've felt that same feeling that of like handing something over to someone like Chloe and going, hey, can you just sort this out for me? And then watching her make it 10 times better than I ever thought it could be. And I'm like, fuck, what have I been doing all these years? Like, I've been labouring here going, no one could do this as well as me. And then I give it to someone and they're like, oh yeah, I can just do it 10 times better than you.
Yeah.
And so now, I'm in a situation where I've got an A team, and you described, your team is awesome. And so I wonder, and the number one thing I hear, I do a weekly Q&A, live, free Q&A. Hey, come and join us. We'll put a link in the show notes. It's just a live thing where we chat about stuff, whatever's on your mind. And this week we talked about client retention, for example, how to make get your clients to stay longer. And so we get a lot of, I have a lot of dialogue every week. We had like 20, 30 people in attendance every week. And I have a lot of dialogue with studio owners. And the number one thing I hear again and again and again and again and again is I can't find great people. Right. So, and I hear it from people in the small towns. Oh, there's no instructors in my towns. And I hear it from the people in the big cities. Oh, all the instructors in my town want to work for the big blah, blah, blahs. So like it seems like, where are these great instructors, and how have you cracked the magic code to assemble this, incredible team?
Oh, it's a good question.
Breathe EDU grads, obviously.
They are.
I'm sorry, it's like the answer is staring us in the face.
I'm not going to sugarcoat it. They all are Breathe ex-grads.
I wasn't fishing for a plug there, by the way. Genuine question.
Since you
no
brought it
fish
up.
in there. It's just like really glowingly obvious.
Yeah, I go from within the business always.
So you choose people from your reformer class, basically.
So a lot of my staff, I'm incredibly lucky too that I've still got some of my core instructors that have been with me for nearly 5 years now.
Oh, no pun intended.
You're thrown to it.
Sorry. I'm just here for the lols.
No pun intended, actually. But yeah, core instructors. Starting off, being an instructor myself. I have been connected in the industry for a while, and starting off, I did start with a lot of incredible instructors that were also my friends. Like, I'm not gonna lie, they were my friends.
So basically, you just DM'd people and like, oh, hey, do you want to come work for me?
Well, actually, they came to me.
Did Kat taught for you?
Kat taught at Rise for a year.
Shout out Kat Webb.
Kat Webb, Good Times Pilates.
Yeah.
Right before she opened Good Times. And yeah, she knew what she was doing all along, working at Rise. I knew we had big chats about running a studio, and yeah, it was always in the pipelines for Kat. And yeah, so I had quite a few friends, and I think in saying that though, I don't want to make it seem that that's how it, like
that's the only way to get in. Yeah,
that wasn't what attracted them to working at the studio in the first place. I think fostering the culture in the first instance actually brought them to me to say, yeah, I want to work in this studio because you care about us as instructors, you care about your clients, you care about giving an awesome experience, great workout, you care about our well-being, you understand what it's like to teach and the little ins and outs of getting sick and like those.
I think that's such a big thing because I think about when I was making my living from full-time instructing, and the difference between having a studio manager / owner who had done the thing, like they had taught and they had, you know, taught as their living, compared to the studio manager who had never taught Pilates in their life. The difference in how I felt supported and understood and heard and inspired and all of those things as instructor, like, hugely different to me. That doesn't mean you have to be a Pilates instructor to own a Pilates studio, but I think if you're going to do that, you want to be sitting down and doing some really good interviews, like tell me about your experience as an instructor. What do you need to feel... Yeah.
Because all businesses need boundaries, but sometimes you need understanding around those boundaries. So they're there for a reason, but at the same time, sometimes you do need to be flexible and understanding of the individual's circumstances. And sometimes you do need to go, okay, well, I get that this is a one-off and I understand. And sometimes that's enough for people to go, oh, wow, you've really heard me and I'm just so grateful for the setup.
So tell me more about, all right, so you had, you know, some friends, because you already were connected in the industry, you've been teaching for a couple of years at that point,
yes.
You know, really very full time. And so you had a couple of friends, Cat Webb, a couple of others come work for you, but it's not the present crew, you know.
No.
This isn't the original lineup of the band, is it?
It's not the original lineup, but I still have a few who
right.
Who
And
work.
so, all right, so you've retained some of those early great people,
Yes.
and you've attracted and retained other great people,
Yes.
you know, and maybe some of them were future great people when you attracted them and you've trained them up and helped them grow.
So that's probably the other two, the two ways of finding my instructors, that they have either been instructors who have started attending the studio for their own practice, and they get a feel for the classes, a feel for the setup of the studio, and then they say, hey, can I go on your covers list because I'd love to work here? And then you see them interact in the studio with your clients.
If you're an instructor out there looking for work, thinking, how do I find work at a studio? Just replay that last 30 seconds and put it on repeat while you sleep.
It's funny.
Exactly.
Do you know,
absolute key.
I still get people reach out to me and saying, how do I go about getting a job? I'm like, have you put yourself on any covers list? Oh no, that's of course it's a great idea.
Yeah.
It should all be like, covers is how you get work.
I think in the US, I just learned they call them subs.
Oh, they call them subs.
So go on the sub list.
There you go. Okay, subs.
I think I'm right on that. I saw it on a YouTube video. Someone was talking about subs this and subs that. I'm like, oh, I think they mean covers.
So that is, even if you have never taught before and you've just finished your course, go to studios, do the classes, the studios that you want to work out, keep going to. Don't just do a couple of classes and go, oh yeah, I've done this person's class, this one class with 5 different instructors. They're not going to remember and have that reoccurring kind of connection with you. So go regularly. It might take a little bit of time, but
you're going to be doing Pilates anyway,
you're going to
right?
be doing Pilates, so do it where you want to work.
And I think also, you know, I mean, when I first started teaching, I just put my hand up for literally everything. I drove, and I wouldn't do this today, but I drove an hour for one class just for the experience of, you know, it sounded like an interesting class, and it was like, okay, well, I've never taught out there before, why not?
Exactly.
And I just think that helps you establish your voice, and it helps you establish, you know, where do you ultimately want to spend most of your time working, etc.
And that's experience. And I think experiences like that are always valuable when you're starting out. And I think there is a fine line where you don't want to be saying yes and burning yourself out to the absolute ground. But there is a fine line again where you do need to put yourself out there. It's not going to happen.
We were talking about this with Kat the other day. Kat, Laura and I took Laura's dogs, her beautiful golden retrievers,
Yes.
for a walk, and we were talking about that.
That you do need to. You have to put yourself out there to get the experience. It's not just going to come to you, and it's probably not going to be if you've only got Monday morning free.
Yeah.
It might not be Monday morning.
You got to do the shift that everyone else doesn't want to do. You
might have to go, one Saturday afternoon. Yeah, cool. I'll do that cover. I'll give it a crack.
Yeah, that's actually something that, because I actually put a crowdsourcing question out on Facebook last week or the week before about this to studio owners and said, okay, what are the things that sort of make a candidate stand out for you and what are the turn-offs? And quite a few of them said stuff about basically friction in the process, like, oh, how about this date? Oh, no, that doesn't work for me. Or can we do blah, blah, blah? It's like, and then there's someone that just goes, yeah, I'll do it.
Yep.
And then they just show up and do it.
Yep.
And you're like, there's the winner right there,
that's
ladies and
the
gentlemen.
winner. And from a studio owner perspective too, I've got over 500 active clients at the moment. I've got 10 to 12 instructors that I'm already in communication with. When you don't have time to constantly follow up people, and especially as much as I love having placement students too, they come at the bottom of running the business, like where they are, like I especially through COVID, that's a learning that you do value having your placement students, because eventually they become your instructors. And having
the placement student, just in case, we've got listeners all around the world, just in case they're not quite sure what a placement student
or observation students.
So someone who's
still doing this,
studying to be a Pilates instructor. Correct. And they come and they watch you teach, basically.
Correct. Yeah. And then they probably start doing the warm up, and then they might do a little bit more, and then next minute they've got a whole class and they're covering or subbing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's probably been a takeaway from COVID, having the studio in Melbourne closed for 9 months. We didn't have the in-house observation students sitting in, and I feel like it got to a point at around reopening probably 2-3 months in where we were down cover teachers, and I was sitting there going, why? Like, how is, like, this has never happened in like nearly 5 years. Why is it happening now? What's changed? And I really do think it was COVID and not having the physical studio lined up.
So basically your strategy for finding staff is look in the front row of your reformer class, okay, and then also the placement students, and presumably it's the placement students, the one who are easy to make a time with, the ones who just show up on time when they say they'll be there, and then they just spontaneously pick up the stuff off the floor, and they start to remember the clients' names and say hi, all of that stuff. Yeah.
All the connection in reception, being just friendly, fitting into the culture of the studio.
All right. And so, last question on this, because I mean, we could actually do a whole episode on this. But, all right. So, again, with your studio owner hat on. So, I mean, these are some great tips for instructors about how to put yourself in the path of studio owners and how to make a good impression. But I'm thinking now for studio owners, right, who are thinking like, well, where do I find these great staff members? And also like, how do I tell, like, if someone comes in and they seem lovely and they teach a good audition class and everything, it's like, well, how do I know that 2 months later they're not just going to be like a bad fit for the studio? And how do I train them up so that they remain a good fit? Because as the studio evolves and you learn and whatever, you want people to keep learning and getting better, in the same way. And also as you step back, you need people to step up, right? So you need someone to be that top tier instructor that that was the role that you filled, and then you need someone to take on their role, right?
And to step up,
and you need someone else to be the work experience kid.
And what I found is that until you actually do take that step, no one can actually step up. Like you actually have to remove yourself from that to let them step up, and it does take time. And I'm not going to lie,
the
there's
egg
always
comes before the chicken.
and there's always going to be that risk that that person might not be the person, but you've then allowed the space for somebody else to come in. So whether that works, hopefully we would think that someone from within the business already would step up into the space of, say, running, studio managing or whatnot. And you're then working with them to empower them in that role, because you've done it before. So you're the expert and you've got the knowledge to then hand to them when they need. So you're just overseeing it. If you get to a point where, okay, that person isn't working out and you've been really open and they've just gone, nope, this is not for me, not what I thought it was, I just want to go back to teaching. You've then still created that space and you've probably set up a lot of processes in the meantime to then let somebody else step up into it. And that's where I've often found that you have to take the risk. You've got to keep stepping forward, otherwise you're not stepping anywhere. So that one step forward is then keeping the momentum to then find the person. So you have to give people a go.
Yeah.
You have to. And if you've only got 5 people applying for it, and you need to give somebody a go, because you can't keep at that standstill going at the rate you're going, because you're not growing. So you need to take the risk and that's where I'm saying let go, because otherwise
it's scary.
Yeah, otherwise there's nowhere to go. So sometimes, yeah, you might have to take a risk with somebody, but it is eventually going to create a space for somebody else who might be better, who might fit in a little bit better. But yeah, you want to try and empower and foster the person that you first put in, because you might surprise yourself that they can even do a better job than you.
Like Chloe did with me. Yeah.
Like Shaman's doing with me.
Well,
There you go. It just keeps multiplying.
Yeah, it works on so many levels, and I think it relates to different industries too, that you do. Yeah, you have to just take the step.
I think there are a couple of profound things there that I'd like to just recap before we move on, which are that, number one, you have to step back before someone else will step forward. You can't be there going like, hey, everyone, I'm the hero, I'm the leader, and now who wants to do my job? Because they're all going to be super intimidated by that and think, I could never fill Laura's boots.
Yeah, it's true.
But when you step away and go, hey, this spot is vacant now, someone can step into that. So that's one thing, like you have to step away first. And the second thing, which you didn't actually say specifically, but I got the sense, and this is what we do basically what we call ride-alongs.
Yep.
So basically when you're doing the role, you're like, hey, Chloe, come and sit with me while I do this task and I'll show you how to do it, sort of thing. And then next time you're like, hey, remember that thing we did last time? Why don't you have a crack at it and I'll help you out if you get stuck, And then you're like, hey, remember that thing you did? Why don't you just go do it and come tell me when it's done, and I'll check your work, sort of thing.
Yeah. That's exactly what I meant. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what we do, although sometimes when you're growing fast, you don't have time and you're like, hey, Chloe, sorry, can you go and sort that situation out, please? I don't have time to give you any more background, but I really need it fixed.
I do think sometimes being thrown in the deep end, you learn a shitload real quick. Yeah.
And it's not the ideal way that we prefer.
It's interesting. I love, it's you super Yoda. Today, Sags. It's very profound. And I think about Raf when I was training to be a trainer and I was shadowing you. And I remember that day still where we got to that point, and at first I was like, every time I had to teach in front of you, I felt like throwing up. It was just like, it's excruciating. It was just, it was a torture. And then I started to get to the point where I was like, no, I want him to see what I'm doing. Do you know what I mean? Watch me. It's like, Dad, watch me. Look what I'm doing. And I just remember that day where you're like, I'm not coming back after lunch. Yeah. Just do it. You're doing, And it was like,
yeah. And that was like so many courses that we taught together. And the first, 5 or 10 or whatever that we taught together was literally just you sitting in the corner watching.
Taking notes.
Yeah. And then after a while, you'd start to throw in your, little or here and there, and you start to go in and help students
Yeah.
with their things. And then it would be like, okay, you'd take the morning session, you know, and then I'd throw in my oar every now and then.
Yeah.
And then one time you just were taking the morning session. I was like, I don't think I need to be here anymore.
Yeah. So he said, and then I was able to, yeah. And that was, yeah,
and
that
I
was an
literally
awesome
went home
moment.
and didn't come back after lunch. And it was like, that was all good.
It was like, job done.
I was like, yes.
Yeah, that
Such
was
a nice
awesome.
feeling when it gets to that point though, where instead of you feeling like, you know, it's like gut churning,
Yeah.
you're like, no, watch me. Did you see what I did there? That was so glad. You know?
And,
it's
and
nice.
I'm back at that square one, starting with you both at Breathe Education. So I'm back at that feeling of going, oh God, Chloe, just watch me teach.
It was really good, by the way.
Speak, but I'm thinking about it. Chloe, just observe me teaching.
I think though that, and this is just a little sidetrack, but like, you know, Chloe was, I think, one of the first people that I really trained up like that. And I don't think anyone else has got, I mean, Nicole maybe, who's our general manager now, she was a trainer with us. She kind of got the same treatment, but, you know, years before. But since Chloe, no one's had that same, you know, level of like co-teaching 20 courses with me or
It was so good. And but then, you know, it was really cute. Then when we got to, we actually shared the Adelaide crew. So I did a couple of weeks, you did a couple of weeks, and that was awesome.
Yeah, it was great.
We got some rave reviews, Raph.
We did.
We were a good teaching team. Yeah, that was fun when it
Dynamic
went
duo.
to us actually sharing the course. Yeah,
But
that
I
was
think
nice.
that, you know, so that was like incredibly labour intensive, and to get, you know, to create one new trainer was like a 2-year
It was
you know,
long.
full-time job.
It
sort of
was.
thing, you know, like,
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
whereas now we've got way
have time
better.
for
We've
that.
got a process. We've got a process. We know, okay, what are the key, number one, how do we choose the right people? Number two, you know, what are the milestones of success, and how do we, you know, and what are the things that are going to facilitate people achieving those quickly? And so we're way better at it now. We've, you know, like, so you know, it won't take you won't have to sit in on 20 courses, you know, with Shaman before you go.
Are you just sitting there going, I didn't know this is what I signed up for?
Yeah, so I mean, you'll hit the ground running in a few weeks,
Yeah.
right? You know, you'll be up and teaching, and that's because one, we know how to choose people now, and two, we've got our process.
Hey,
of
hey,
training
I
them
was
up
all
better.
right though.
You were the right person.
Okay.
Yeah.
You were so
You had to
right
choose him, but
that
still
you got
took it
the
2
special
years.
treatment.
You were so right. We didn't have any process, right? The process was you just watch me do it until you kind of start to get the hang of it, and then you do it. You know, like,
And for a long time, I sounded like Raph and Nicole because I did quite a bit of shadowing with Nick as well, and my teaching voice was not my own. It was either you or it was Nick, and I could.
did you say
hear-
Coolio?
Yes,
Coolio.
I still say Coolio.
Say hi,
And
gang.
every time I say Coolio and hi gang, I'm like, there's Raph. But I do say Coolio a lot, and I'm like, man,
I think you still do, Chloe.
I do. I know I do. But then you know, you.
And
You find your own
actually,
voice.
you've been responsible, Chloe, for creating a lot of those processes around training trainers and aligning trainers. But I didn't have any of that. I was just like, hey, here's what I'm doing. See if you can copy it, sort of thing, which wasn't a great process. But anyway,
Oh, it worked.
Chloe got to the point where she was like, I need other people.
yeah, and Chloe's like,
How
what?
do
You've
we-
got no process. Like, what? So, yeah, Chloe's created a lot of those processes. And now we have an incredibly aligned training team.
Yeah.
That, you know, I mean, we had a Google review the other day that said, like, the trainers are like some kind of weird cult. Everyone's literally 100%, you know, on script 100% of the time, you know.
And that is, apart from the cult part, that is music to my ears. We've been called a science cult before. Remember that one, Raph? But that's music to my ears, because when I was in the role of training manager, which I'm not now, Shaman's in the role now, but when I was, my one of my absolute top shelf goals was get
Trainer
everyone
alignment,
yeah.
singing from the same.
And I think with that,
So that's just,
Yeah.
I mean, hearing that, and we hear that all the time, rarely do it. We just don't hear, oh, I went to this person's, you know, tutorial and it was so much better than that person's tutorial.
Or this person told me to do it this way, and that person told me to do it
whereas
that
now
way.
it's
yeah.
literally just like
alignment.
every trainer
Yeah.
is just so awesome and so welcoming, and yeah.
and we're all giving the same information.
Exact same information.
And what I
no
love
confusion.
so much about that too is that it is so aligned, but everybody is still their own individual.
Yes.
Yeah.
They are still delivering it from their authentic selves.
Yep.
That it's all the same content. Like you said, the learners are all still getting
Yes.
the same information. They're being taught the same things consistently, but they're getting the instructors in their best selves.
Right, and that's because it's not a script. These
Yeah.
are, we don't say these are the words you must say. We say, here is what we agree is the correct way to do this exercise. Here is what we agree are the great cues, to use in this situation. But we don't say you must say these words in this order or anything like that. But that's basically what I was taught when I was a Stop Pilates instructor trainer. Anyway, let's get back on topic. And so, have you ever tapped a client on the shoulder who's not an instructor and said, "Hey, would you ever think about coming to work for us and being an instructor?"
There have been I have done it, yes, but when I do it, I really mean it. I don't just say it to the clients that I kind of drop the little, have you thought about it? When I say it to them, I really genuinely mean that I think they should be an instructor and I think you'd be awesome. And I think saving it for those moments, because often there's lots of people in the studio too, you don't want to go around throwing it like confetti to everybody.
Oh, did Laura tell you? Laura told me I'd be a great instructor as well.
But Laura didn't tell me that I should be one. Maybe I suck at Pilates.
Yeah, and that's not the case either. Yeah. And there are amazing instructors that even we have now that I never said you should. Have you thought about becoming an instructor? But they have, and they're awesome. And you kind of go, wow, how did I never even think of that when you were a client? Because it makes so much sense now.
Who was one of your first teachers?
My first teachers. Okay, so I had like a dream team. I'm not gonna
as in I mean like as when you were a client.
When I was a client, this is what I'm getting to. Okay. So my very first, my intro pack, I had legends. I had Chelsea Cameron as my very first instructor ever, who is at Body Mind Life now. James Trenery, KX, and you, Chloe Bunter.
I was like, oh man, is it coming? This is one of my awesome clients.
And how could I have not fallen in love with Pilates with my startup teachers being you?
I still remember, I remember
seriously
and how much you loved it. You were just that client that always had there's no resting bitch face with you. She just had this massive smile on her face. So not that there's anything wrong with exercising resting bitch face. It just makes it hard to read the room. But Laura was just how she's so smiley. And she was
when
just this little ray of sunshine yeah.
And I'll also tell you that it's hard.
Yeah, she was an
I'll grunt
awesome
through
client.
the pain and I'll smile and I'll laugh.
Yeah.
That's the same way that Chloe came on board with us.
Yeah.
She was in the front row of our reformer class, figuratively speaking. I don't you trained with us 2012,
I wasn't exactly a standout student though.
But then, then I actually travelled up to Sydney. I was living in Melbourne. You were living in Sydney. I travelled up to Sydney. We went out for a drink or dinner or something like that.
Yeah, you said you had something you want to discuss with me. I'm like, Raphael Bender wants to discuss something with me. What? You were kind of mythological to me. It was
text me
the man,
so
the
I
myth.
know what I'm in for.
And
Send me the brief
I asked you if you wanted to be a trainer.
And I was just what? That didn't see that coming. But I had worked my ass off in between my subpar efforts as a student, and I'm very overt about that. I talk to my students about, I'm like, don't be me. Don't do it how I did it. Let's learn from my lessons. And I had to work because I was a slack student.
You're a much better teacher than you are a student.
Yes, I was a really slack student. I was, seriously. And then I got we're talking about covers. And I know we still haven't talked about COVID. We're talking about covers, and one of my first gigs, so I did some observations at, it was back then called Perfect Pilates in Brunswick West. Stella was working there. So that's how, connections. It was like, Stella's like, come do some covers, come do some observations. And anyway, this is just like, talk about a dream. I got paid $50 to basically assist this class, right? So it was this huge warehouse space, and you'd get anywhere upward of 30 plus clients in this, and it's open, so anyone could be there. So my job was to just go around and offer modifications. So like, what an amazing way that's where I did a lot of my learning, because I just had to on the job. And anyway, I remember one night I went in to assist one of the instructors, and she was extremely popular. Like, she had that following that they're not there just because of the time slot. They're there because of Kelly's class. Like, she was and she had a very unique style. She also taught yoga. She was also a dancer. And she just kind of melded it all into this amazing flow. Like, she was the queen of flow. Like, I loved assisting for her. Anyway, I show up like, yeah, I'm all like keen, ready. And the owner's like, you're going to have to teach. I went, Marcus, hilarious. And he's like, Kelly's sick. You're going to have to teach. Look at this room. It is full. Everyone has paid to be here. You are going to have to teach. And I just went like pale and just was like, and I was like, oh, fuck, I'm going to have to do it. Like I had no option of running away. And I remember just thinking, just wing it. And I told so many bad jokes that night. Like, I just amplified my personality by like 50 billion%. I was just like, I just honestly, what went through my mind was, I'm going to need to get through on personality.
Yeah.
And it worked.
Yeah.
I kept the movements really basic. Like, I think we did a shit ton of squats and lunges. Like, we probably did mainly squats and lunges, some balance work. Then we probably got down and did some ab work, and I probably gave them some hip bridges while we were there and some side leg. Like, I just kept it simple and from then on it was like, it was the start of it. It empowered me to go, well, fuck yeah, I actually can do this, and actually can get by on personality at the beginning too is totally fine, and that's okay, because really it's like, it's not about how fancy are the moves, it's about how you leave the clients feeling. And they all left seemingly like they'd had a great time. I got no negative feedback, and from then on I actually got put on the books. So I then it was like, oh no, you're not getting paid to assist anymore. Sorry. You're going to start teaching. We're going to give you time slots. So anyway, that was the start of like, that story. Yeah, that was,
I love that story, Chloe.
That was the start of my career, was that one night when Kel, and I still talk to Kel about it. It's the one night when Kel was sick, and I got to basically step into my hero's shoes, which felt huge to fill. But I really remember, I can still, and this would have been, almost 9 years ago now when this happened, maybe 8 plus. And I still just remember thinking, just personality, bring it. Just bring it. So yeah, anyway, and here I am. So
that is what you need to do though. When those opportunities present themselves,
take it.
You're not going to feel ready. Like there's no perfect time. And if you do get a almost perfect time, you are very lucky. Very, very lucky.
And so much of, and this is what I say to our students as well, and particularly the students that are now at, we've got the amazing Feb crew, they're week 18. So what that means is they've got 2 weeks to go. And last night I was like sitting there with them. I'm like, so tell me how you're feeling. And then they were like, nervous, excited, not ready, but ready. And it's like, you're as ready as you can be.
Yeah.
Like, I actually can't get you more ready now. We've still got a couple of lessons to go and they're going to be great, but it's really consolidation here, because I can't get you more ready. How you now get more ready is you need to learn on the job. You need to do the thing. You're all skilled.
Yep.
Like, they're all skilled and competent. There's no doubt about that. Way more competent than I was when I finished as a student, because I was really slack, and these
and also,
crew are not slack.
The training that you went through was 100 times less good than
Correct. Yeah. So just FYI, everyone, it was not the course that we teach now. That is just so we all are clear on that. So yeah, you gotta do that. You just gotta get out there and do it in the real world.
Band-Aid off.
Rip the Band-Aid
when
off.
the opportunity presents, you need to jump. Just jump.
Yeah, well, I felt like I got pushed, but
Jump,
knowing my
push.
personality, like back then, and how I was kind of sitting back a bit with it, and I would have probably been thinking, I'm not ready. So I actually needed that.
Yeah, you need.
You've
to
got
push.
no opportunity not to teach this right now, Chloe, because my business needs you to teach it. There's a warehouse full of people waiting for a class. Yeah.
And
So there you go.
personality is so important.
Yeah,
That
and we've-
engagement is
Yeah.
half of it.
think
I'm
it's
I'm
way
going to
more than
say
half of
more
it,
than
yeah.
half. That
I
how you-
relied on it very
Yeah.
heavily in that first year of my
And
teaching
so,
career.
well, you still do though. Like you're like that. People are so drawn to you for that reason. That's why people keep coming back. Like otherwise, you're teaching a bunch of exercises. We all teach the same exercises.
Well, that's the thing. We all teach the same exercises,
Like,
don't
it's
we? I think
true.
about it sometimes. I'm like, we're teaching the same thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Like-
And in circles, it's all the same. But
Yeah.
how your personality, how you empower your clients, how you make people feel, is what draws them back to you. So for you to pick that up with your very first cover, you're onto it from like the very start, Chloe.
I'm sure I had a shaky voice and all sorts of things until I got into just pure adrenaline. I think it's also what got me through that class.
When I remember my very first cover, I was teaching at Williamstown Pilates, and it was a little clinical studio, and there was, I think, 7 reformers, and 2 of them were a little bit different. And
Is
I
that with
remember
Cliff
with
and-
Cliff
yeah.
Butler, yes.
Ah.
And I remember driving there, and I literally almost had to pull over to be sick.
Yeah,
And sometimes now when I drive that same way through Williamstown, I still get like that reoccurring feeling of like I'm going to
Oh,
be sick.
do you?
Yeah, because my nerves was so nerves are good. Nerves are normal. They're going, okay, this is a dangerous situation.
And conditioning is a thing as well.
Yeah, yes, exactly. I've conditioned myself to feel sick every time I drive through Williamstown.
And don't you think though nervousness and excitement, they're so
They're the same thing, yeah.
Like it
Yeah.
gives you that.
Yeah.
So sometimes
The
it's hard to
adrenaline.
tell
Physiologically, they're the same thing.
which
Yeah.
one's going on. You know, it's probably a
Yeah.
good mixture of both. And I always say to the students, it's good to have. You know, I still get nervous before I teach. I can
Yeah.
hear it in my voice. I can hear it in my the start. I sound different to how I feel how I sound 5 minutes into a class. Yeah, I think it's because I care. Like if you care about something and you want to do a
Exactly.
really good job.
And I think that's important to highlight too, that even though you've been teaching for nearly 10 years, that you still get nervous. I'm sitting through the March Cert 4 at the moment, the current Breathe Education certificate. And I had to teach last night to 2 brand new students, and I was nervous. I
Oh,
taught 100
bless.
people on Zoom the other week, and I was more nervous teaching 2 brand new students and Chloe watching me. So it's important to know that no matter how long you're teaching, that it still comes up from time to time that you can still feel nervous. If you go away on a holiday for 4 weeks and you go, oh shit, how do I do my job again?
Yeah.
Get a little bit nervous. Yeah. Nerves are good.
Nerves are good. Nerves are good. Yeah.
So before the break, we kept promising that we were going to
We've
talk
been
about
promising it for like ages.
what you learned from COVID.
From COVID.
So
Okay,
so let's go
let's get
there.
there.
All right. So it's you know we've painted the picture of February 2020. All right. So now March comes around, and don't talk us through the whole blow every day of COVID,
Yep.
but like what your studio has survived, your business has
Yes.
survived. I'm sure you made some mistakes. I'm sure you've had some wins.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you saw other people making mistakes as
Yeah.
well. So
There
what have
was-
you learned?
So when the ship hit the iceberg,
Oh, wow. I was like, did she mean to say shit? I'm weird.
it wasn't a slip
When-
this time. Ship.
Shit per.
I could see it coming. So I think the week prior to Australia going into lockdown, it was that first time in March. It was the whole of Australia, the whole world really. I could see that there was something really significant coming. So the week prior to the studio doors closing, I got the team together and I said, okay, this is what I can foresee happening, that we are going to have time closed. So are you all interested in filming some content, recorded mat Pilates sessions to keep our clients and our community engaged during this time? So...
And you gave it away for free, right?
No, I did not. I did not. So I paid my instructors for their classes. We set up the studio.
So you recorded at Rise?
At Rise. Yep. So this is when we were still allowed in the studio.
Oh, you're a smart cookie, aren't you?
Yeah, so there were different times, and I'm sure this happens all around the world, where there's different rules of what's allowed and what's not during how bad the COVID outbreaks are. So at this point, we were allowed in the studio. So studio looks like the ship's about to hit the iceberg, and I go, okay, we need to do something. So got the staff together. They all said, yep, absolutely, count me in. I'm in for whatever you're going to throw us into. My brother's a videographer, so I already had the connection, which was very lucky. Otherwise, I probably would have got someone in regardless. And we set up the Rise reception as a little studio backdrop and started filming 25-minute mat classes to be put onto an online, anytime accessible library. So this was before COVID even hit. We started recording these. So by the time COVID had shut our doors, the first week in, that was ready to go. So we had that going out. We charged. It did have to be in line with what was already out there in the on-demand library world. And so there was a few, but my reasoning for doing our own was so that our clients could still have connection to their instructor. That was the most important, that we're still moving with you and you can do it whenever. Because going into lockdown means working from home, you've got homeschooling, you've got all the different things happening around your house, cats, dogs. It can get overwhelming to go, okay, I don't even know when to. So my philosophy was, you've got any time to do that then. You don't need to be locked in. So that's the first probably 2 weeks going into the first week of lockdown. And then I realised, no, actually there are people out there who still need to stick to a timetable. That I think there's two different types of clients. That there's some that do like to do it in their own time whenever they get a chance. They'll book last minute. They're the last minute people that run up the stairs going, oh, I just booked into your class. I'm so glad I got to make it. And then there's others that they do their 6 a.m. class every day of the week, and that's their time, and they need someone there. They need that locked in. Otherwise, they don't have that motivation. So that's where we trialed Zoom classes live. So we went, okay, we've got the online website on demand set up, ready to roll. It's already going out. It's already accessed. Let's go to Zoom. So same thing, said to my team, who's in? And I still to this day am blown away that they were all in. Every single one of them was in, and they did everything that I put out there. I'm still blown away. I'm lost for words. And yeah, I threw them in the deep end, and I said, we're doing Zoom. I set it up. I put the thing there. I got the light, got the thing, turned it on, logged it on. And you can imagine back then, Pilates instructors are just Pilates instructors. We don't have tech backgrounds. We're not like computer whizzes.
There's giggling coming from tech side of stage people.
So I found myself.
Well, Josh, our tech guy, this is news to him, so maybe you could explain it to him after we finish recording
after 18
today.
months of like watching us all in here. Yeah.
He's only been working with the Breathe team, and we're all freaking awesome at tech. So
It's definitely a skill in itself.
Everyone, Ralph's being really sarcastic there. Bless us trainers. We try. We're really good at teaching Pilates.
Well, that's the thing. That's what you're good at.
Yeah.
That's what you've spent like your thousands of hours doing. We haven't
Correct.
spent thousands of hours learning how to operate computers and tech and Zoom and send links and, so I found myself once again in the position of learning how to do the tech for the staff so that we could put the classes out, realizing I can't teach 5 Zoom classes a day myself either. So I from the studio learnings, I knew this going into it. So I had the team ready and willing to jump on board, but I found myself doing the tech side, going, okay, I need to learn how to do Zoom. I need to learn how to make sure that the lights, that the camera's in focus, that they've got the setup going. So for the first 3 months, I think I was at the studio from like 6 a.m, 5:45. Some days I'd have like a little break, go home, and then come back for the 6 o'clock class in the afternoon and still be there at 7. And I remember just going, whoa, like what, like this is more than I ever did.
So these are for the live.
For the live ones. So
and why more?
So more for the engagement of the keeping your clients accountable to the time in the live setup.
Oh, but I mean, why did you have to do more work? Because the others
why
couldn't
did I
come
have
in
to do more work? Okay, so learning how to do tech.
Oh, 'cause
I
of the
was
tech. Yeah,
at
getcha.
the bottom of the food chain. Like I've learnt a lot. And in that time frame too, a lot of new systems have also become available. So there wasn't an integration from MindBody to Zoom. So I was manually sending all the links every single time we had a class and adding people as they added themselves last minute to the class.
Okay,
so there was
we went through that phase as well.
so it was a phase, and I think it was just waiting for the tech to actually come on board. So
catch up with the world.
Yeah, so by the time we went into Melbourne's second lockdown, that had been rectified. MindBody were pretty, like they jumped on it, and there were integration programs that kind of put it all together. I actually think it's called Loyal Snap, not MindBody. So I think there's a partner program to MindBody called Loyal Snap, and they set up the Zoom links to the MindBody.
Right.
Put it all together. Anyway, there's learning in there. So I was back learning and having to work out how to get it all. And yeah, so going back to the very first Zoom class, that was our trial, and I did put that on the schedule for free just to get a feel for engagement. And we were still doing the camera setup, the lighting, just learning how to do it ourselves. And it was nerve-wracking to then be in front of a camera, because again, as a Pilates instructor, you're not used to being in front of a camera. You're not used to getting up and having to speak to people, and sometimes it being recorded and not knowing who else is watching you from their homes, not just the person doing the class, but there's
doing a
people
lot
cooking in the background, and they're hearing you speak and teach as well. So
your mum messaged me and said that she loves hearing me in the background
my mum,
on Sundays during the reformer class.
I come out because I do Chloe's class every Sunday morning with her, and mum's often in the kitchen while I'm doing it, and I'll come out and mum will go, oh, that sounded like a great one. I'm like, it was.
Thanks, Kath. Shout out, Kath. That's awesome.
So it's true. Like there's other people around, and I think once
doing a lot more of it ourselves as well. Did you find that? Because that's the main thing for me that I've noticed doing stuff online. You physically do a lot more of it.
You do.
Yeah, particularly Matt. And I just remember, and this was something that went on with instructors all over the world. Everyone's like, oh my God,
I'm so unfit.
We've got to
prep ourselves for this.
Cue, and I'm just like, I need to start jogging and singing at the same time to get my
talking and teaching is a skill in itself. Yeah.
Yeah. So okay, so you pivoted
to online, in both contexts pretty quick.
Okay,
and
so
adapted
did
accordingly.
So I know that. Okay, so then you were charging.
Charging, yes. We ended up doing similar to the studio structure where like 10 pack, there was a unlimited direct debit option. There was a single class if you just wanted
how
to
Raph
drop
feels about
in.
unlimited.
Yeah.
Not a fan.
I'm
But
not a fan either.
In Zoom, actually, it's different because you've got no upper limit on how many people you can have in your class.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
I thought we were talking about payment here. Unlimited as in
Unlimited classes.
yeah.
Yeah. I don't like it in a reformer studio
No,
because you've only
no.
got 13 reformers.
Precisely.
Oh, I get
Right?
you.
It
Okay.
does.
But I've got infinite spots in my Zoom reformer class. So I don't care if you take up as many places as you want. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
That's right.
Interesting.
100%. Yep. So we ended up doing unlimited and membership option drop in, and also packs if you're purchasing more than one for however various 5,
Like
10.
a 5-pack, 10-pack.
Yeah.
And the clients were happy to pay that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think they also wanted to. Like you're not in business. They come to you every week doing your reformer classes. You're still the same teacher teaching the same skills. Therefore, why wouldn't you charge? Because you're still offering your service.
Can I just, take a moment here, and I think maybe we'll just have a minute's silence or something. But holy shit, this is something that I feel so strongly about. The Pilates instructors of the world, and this doesn't apply to absolutely everyone, obviously doesn't apply to you, Laura Sagers, but so many instructors I see saying, we're in lockdown, my clients aren't working, so I'm going to offer classes for free. No, they've got it exactly fucking backwards. Your clients are affluent knowledge workers who are able to do their work from home. They're just now saving all the cost of commuting and eating fucking lunch at expensive restaurants in the city. So they're actually better off financially, a lot of them. Guess who's out of work? The fucking Pilates instructors. That's who, right? So it's the people who can't afford it subsidising the people who can afford it.
Precisely.
It's exactly fucking backwards.
Yep.
Oh my God, don't get me started. You already did.
And
But
that was a huge epiphany in those first 2-3 weeks for me, because we didn't know if there was going to be any government financial support in any context whatsoever. So my automatic response was, how can we still run a business and pay the instructors? Because you're still offering the same service.
So what I want to kind of touch on here, though, is that there were competitors, though.
Yeah,
That
there were so many out there
that went and slashed their prices.
or made it free.
doing it for free. And I think that made it very challenging, because there was so much out there being offered for free that it made it hard, or not hard, but it was a contrast then charging.
Yeah. So when you're doing it for free, and I know people did it for free with the best of intentions, and their heart was coming from a good place, but it's like they're trying to be kind to people, but they're actually being kind to people who actually got much more money than they do.
Yep.
And it's they're harming their fellow instructors and studio owners, because if you're giving
Harming
it
the
away for
industry.
free,
Yep.
it's like, well, how's Laura supposed to charge full price for it next door?
Exactly.
And I don't
Exactly.
expect my instructors to come and teach for free. So why would I then expect, why would I then not charge the clients? Because I'm paying the instructor because I see their value. So
Yeah. And so that, kindness that people were trying to do to their clients, I will do it for free, it's actually doing damage to the industry, and not just the industry, because the industry is like an abstract concept. It's doing damage to actual humans who are Pilates instructors and studio owners who are trying to make a living, and you're now competing with them by doing it for free.
Yeah, it's not cool.
No.
I had some really quite strong conversations around that time when I saw some of the bigwigs doing it. I'm like, really? You devalue what your
everything that
instructor brings, and you put so much value on a bricks and mortar. You know, that is the experience. Comes down to the bricks and mortar and the flashy lights. To me, that's really sad. Your product is your instructor.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right?
It's the experience and it's the results
You
the
can
client
have
gets,
a
you know.
beautiful studio, but if you don't have the right teachers in their teaching, it's just a pretty space.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the value is.
That was a bit of a quotable quote there, Sakes.
So write that
Wow,
down.
she's just like, you're on fire.
I think though it was. Can we cut that as well? A little mumbo jumbo here. The studios and the teachers doing it though, I do believe they were coming from the right place, but the long-term goal and the long-term game plan even is not taken into consideration, where you do have to think past that period of time. Okay, how is that actually going to affect us in the long run? Yes, it's actually being kind and doing a community service almost, and still I genuinely think their intentions were right at keeping their community and keeping their clients engaged with them and keeping people moving, which we know is so important, especially going through a global pandemic. But the long-term effects of that is actually not beneficial to anybody, especially your instructors and especially your business that you want people to then be able to come back to after.
Yeah. Starts to spiral to the bottom.
Yeah,
price-wise.
it does. And I do think that, or I hope that has kind of changed now that we're however many months out now.
Well, I don't know about around here, but I'm a member of a bunch of Pilates forums on Facebook and stuff in different countries like UK, US, whatever. And I still see that, we're going into lockdowns, I'm doing free Zoom classes. And I always just want to bang my head against the wall.
I've seen it. I've seen it happen instantly with Sydney going into a snap lockdown these last 2 weeks. Oh my God, all the free classes that have just gone up on Instagram.
If you're a Pilates instructor and you want to give away free stuff, just send me $50, right? Just to get a $50 note, stick it in an envelope, address it to Raphael Bender, care of Breathe Education, 157 Heidelberg Road, Northcote, Vic 3070. I'll appreciate it. That'll be awesome. In fact, send $500. We'll buy some coffees for the team.
Yeah.
You know, maybe we'll buy some more lights for our studio. I don't know.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
It's really unusual.
I do want to reflect too, because my whole philosophy throughout COVID has been still charge as usual, still value what you're doing as a business, what you're putting out there, what your instructors are worth. And we've just come out of our 4th little mini lockdown in Melbourne. And it originally started as a 7-day lockdown, and we've built our online library massively now. So when a lockdown kind of hits, it's not the same kind of, okay, what do? We know what to do. We've been prepared. So this time round, 7 days, we're going into winter in Australia, and the instructors are starting to get to that kind of wind down, feeling a little bit run down. 7 days this time round was like, okay, we've put in the hard yards for the last 12 months. We've come back. We've given it our all. We've got the online library. Everything's ready to roll. So we went back to our online service and had 7 days. That 7 days then got extended. So I still thought, okay, it's only 7 days. Kind of could have jumped on Zoom, but given the kind of the morale that, yeah, we're actually enjoying this little breather. We've kind of earned it over the last, what are we, 16 months, 18 months maybe. So I thought, okay, I still want to kind of keep my community connected in a Zoom class. We nailed them the other lockdowns. So I thought, okay, I love my Saturday mornings. So I will always keep my teacher Saturday morning. That's my time. So I thought, okay, we're mid lockdown, 7 days to the 14 days. I'll jump on Zoom and I'll put on an online class. A little bit cheeky of me too. I think part of it was that I didn't want to have to go and set up for people to then purchase and have that kind of, I think I wanted to keep the community engaged. I wanted to see my clients, and I thought, oh yeah, I'll just put one on for free. Okay. And I the only other time we did that was the very, very first Zoom trial. And I had 100 people sign up within 12 hours. And I kind of
was watching those numbers going up. I was like, oh my God.
I kind of got a bit of a shock. And it was a huge, and I then kind of thought, okay, how big is this going to go? So I opened up the wait list and it kept rolling too. I think there ended up being like 56 people on the wait list as well. And then there were all these other clients were like, yeah, I didn't even bother adding myself. I saw that you were so waitlisted with 100 people and 56 on the wait list that I didn't even bother. So moral of that story is that
if you'd charged each of them $10.
Yeah, and even if I dropped 80 of them, that's still 80 people that would have happily, they do my class every week. They come to my studio.
And $10 would have been a discounted rate.
Yeah.
But it still could have been a community give back. We're going to put this one on for $10.
And you pay that at the coffee shop when you go and get a coffee and I didn't feel devalued in that, but because my intentions and how it happened, but it reflected back to me, hey, that's why, like, you can't be doing that. Like that you're setting yourself up.
Yeah.
It was just a smack in the face to go, okay, like.
And I guess I would say also to those people, maybe listening to this thinking like, banging the table in outrage and thinking like, oh, well, we want to help people, why are you yelling at us for helping people? It's like, all right, well, if great, help people who need it, right? Don't help the people who don't need it. Like, why don't you have a policy of like, our prices are the same. And if you've lost your job because of COVID, come and tell us and you can do it for free.
Yeah.
Right? But don't just give it for free to everyone.
Yeah. And that's really what I should have done. But you live and you learn, and it's normal to make those mistakes. And sometimes you need that little bit of a smack in the face to go, hey, yeah, you actually did the right thing the first time round.
Yeah.
The other thing I've seen with that as well is, with all of this, and we're talking about devaluing and discounting and etc., is the perception that mat Pilates is somehow subpar to reformer Pilates.
Yep.
And I truly believe that there's been a renaissance of the mat due to the world going online and the majority of people not having reformers.
Yep.
And all of a sudden everyone's like, oh shit, mat's really hard and it's a really good workout and I've got no springs helping me out here. It's actually fantastic, and it's something that I don't need machinery for, and it's like
that you can whip out your mat in your 2 meters little corner of your apartment.
But don't devalue your mat pricing is what I'm would say as well. Don't, I know a lot of people have been doing that. It's like, oh, it's mat, so it's only $5. If it's reformer, it's...
No, if you're teaching online, it needs to be consistent with what you're charging, because you're essentially teaching with the same effort and the same knowledge and presence and skills across the board. I think the difference in a reformer studio is that you have limited spaces and you have...
Reformers are really expensive.
Yeah, you've outlaid a lot of money to set up that business with those reformers. So in context of why clients would pay more in a studio setting for reformer Pilates is that the outgoings for it have been significantly more than
and you
a
can
space
probably
with a few
get
mats.
more mats into a space than reformers.
Precisely.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you said. And when I ran a studio, our mat classes were cheaper than our reformer classes. But I've been doing a lot of reading in the last few months about pricing. And I now challenge the thinking that I had around this, that the value that people, value is highly subjective, basically, is what I've learned. And that, so if we think of like, what makes something more valuable to one person versus another person, well, I think airlines are an incredibly apt example, where if you buy a ticket from city A to city B, right, you could pay $200 or you could pay $2,000 on the same aircraft, right? And so what do you get for the extra money? Well, you get, if you book further in advance, it's cheaper. So you sacrifice flexibility for cost savings. And the cheaper tickets, you can't cancel them, you can't reschedule them, all of this stuff. You don't get extra luggage allowance. You have to wait till the end of the queue before you can board the aircraft. You get the seats with no leg room, all of these things. But the core thing that they're selling, the airlines are selling, is transport by air from city A to city B. Is exactly the same, right? But people will literally pay 10 times, a price premium for those intangibles that go around it, like flexibility in booking and cancelling and luggage and how much legroom you get and whether you get a glass of champagne on arrival and all of that stuff. And it's like, well, why is that different to mat and reformer,
So we can have champagne on arrival?
Yeah. Well, actually, I mean, this gets into a whole other discussion, but for some of your clients, like you were saying before, there are those last minute people that just do it, ad hoc.
Yeah.
And there are those people that like to be organised, right? And I don't know about your studio, but a lot of studios have a booking window where you're only allowed to book X number of days or weeks in advance, right? I'm only allowed to book a fortnight in advance, for example. And so if I'm one of those ad hoc people, well, I don't care about that.
Yeah.
Right? I only ever book 5 minutes in advance anyway, so who cares?
Yeah. Yeah.
But then if I'm one of the 6 a.m. 5 days a week for the rest of eternity people, right? Well, I just want to set that at the start of the year and forget it, right? I don't ever want to have, but if I want to get into my 6 a.m. class with Laura that I love so much, and I have to be up at 11:59 p.m. on a Sunday night when the booking resets, right?
Yeah. I used to have clients do that in Bondi, and they'd stay up until it reset that night
now,
to book in.
If I'm that person, right? And if you say, hey, Raf, for $10 extra a week, you can book a year in advance, I'll be like, I'll take it.
Yeah. Because that's your that you value that, so you're gonna
right. Whereas if I'm the ad hoc person, if you say for $10 extra a week you can book a year in advance, you're like, why would I want to do that?
I book when I come. I've got 10 minutes. Yeah, cool, I can get there.
So, and there are all kinds of other things that you could do to add value in your business that aren't to do with the teaching of the class, right?
Yeah, I love that.
So I think, anyway, that's a discussion for another day. But, I just think in relation to the price of mat versus reformer, I 100% agree. Like, the convention is that it's cheaper, that you don't have to pay for the equipment, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, well, when I get on a jumbo jet, I still have to pay for the jumbo jet. If I'm in economy class, why is it cheaper?
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess too, even comparing reformer to mat, you really shouldn't go, the setup doesn't, you're still... The instructor's still teaching the same awesome class. Did you put your prices up when you had to buy all your video gear and stuff? No? There's always so much to take into consideration. But if you bring it back to the skill of what you're offering and the value. I love that analogy, the airline. My brain is ticking.
So, all right. So you've survived COVID, and touch wood, we're still going through it. But I mean, I think things are looking. So you've survived this far. You're not going to bite on the rock now. So, what does your studio business model, look like now in the second half of 2021?
Yep.
How's it different than it was in February 2020?
I think we have been lucky in Australia that the physical studios did bounce back in full force pretty quickly.
So when lockdown ended, people was like, can't wait to get back into the Pilates studios.
It was so waitlisted, not just my studio, but most gyms and studios around the country from what I could see. And that definitely helped because you've got your community coming straight back into full force straight away. The problem is though that you're then you're capped with your numbers, and so you're then capped with your profit. You're capped at, like, you still have all the same
Still only
outgoing.
got 12 reformers in the room.
Well, no, 10. Yeah, so you're down. Like, it doesn't seem huge when you say, oh yeah, it's only
Maybe
one
put
machine.
a couple out the front and do
But
it al fresco.
yeah, like having space like that to be is like, this was the time that you needed that space to go, okay, we can do outdoors, we can do 2-on-1s, and the people who can't get into the classes, because again, you've only got 24 hours in a day. You can't have, well, I guess you could have 24 hours. Has anyone done that yet?
Anytime Fitness.
Yeah, Anytime Reformer. It's just 24-hour Pilates classes. But in like a reality, in context, people work and there's a small amount of people that probably would get up and exercise at 3 a.m, but that they're not your usual clients. So putting classes on at 3 a.m, you're probably not going to get much of a show. So we can wipe that. So you've only got X amount of time in the day to run classes, therefore you are capped at what you can do.
Unless you put Zoom classes on, because 3 a.m. in Melbourne
Yes.
is like midday in Florida,
Yes,
for example.
Exactly. But I don't know about you, but I don't really want to get up at 3 a.m.
But if you wanted to open up your capacity around the 24-hour clock.
Exactly. So there's definitely ways around that. So thinking outside the box in that time of being able to, I don't have space, an outdoor space at Rise. We're second floor up, no balcony or anything like that, but there were studios out there doing 2-on-1s and really utilising just the space that they had to then generate extra profit and also give your instructors more work. Where was I going
Yeah, so
with that?
tell us about your business model now.
Oh yeah, the business model now. So we are lucky that we've been able to go back to 12 machines. So it's almost pretty much back to normal. The business model now includes an online demand library that we've spent the last 12 months. We did invest a lot into that too, but now
In terms of video equipment and
Yes,
software and
precisely
Yeah.
the web, all the tech side of it, and also paying the instructors to come. I've included all of my team that does eventually bulk into a huge outgoing, but that's been so worthwhile because now we've got this awesome online library that the clients can still access anytime. If they go on holidays, they can still do classes with their instructors as they would during the week. And I guess something that I've had to take into consideration is COVID itself in the studio, that you want to still do as much as you can to prevent any outbreaks, but also people's expectations in the space in terms of creating a safe environment. And by safe, I mean making them feel that they, like, debunking their fear around coming to a class.
No more instructors showing up with like a sniffly nose or a coughing
and I guess managing the studio
voice
from
or
that
a
perspective
clients with a
has
cold.
taken that like I said at the start of the podcast, you've got boundaries and they're there for a reason, and they're like, we've got a 9-hour cancellation window. That's there, but if you're in hospital, and something significant has happened, of course we're going to be understanding.
And
but if you're just running late for no reason and you can't be
Yeah.
bothered coming, of course, that's why we've got boundaries.
I feel like everyone's being more lenient with, I've had to cancel an appointment here and there due to the fact I've got like
sore
had
throat
a cough.
or
Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah. And they're just like, yeah, no worries.
Yeah.
Woo, yep, there will be no charge for that. That's so fine.
Yeah.
Do not come anywhere near us.
And-
It's like, yeah.
And I think in terms
No more clients that come in to say, oh, I'm just having a sick day. I'm here to sweat it out. Ugh, do not be that client.
Yeah, so I think that's probably been the biggest shift, that there does need to be flexibility around that. And the more flexible you can be, the better rapport you build with your clients. That you at the end of the day, because when you do have a lot of people coming through the door weekly, you get a lot of requests, and whilst you're sitting there as either the studio owner or the studio manager, it's like a broken record sometimes. It's like, oh, can I please have this because XYZ? Can I? But you have to remember that those people don't ask all the time. It's one person and it's probably their first time asking. They've been your client for the last 2 years. It's the first time they've ever asked you for anything. It's COVID. They're doing the right thing. You have to go, okay, I in this context, yes, I can early cancel you from this class. Thank you for letting us know and do the right thing. I have been on the other side of that as a client prior to COVID, and I had been going to the studio for 18 months, spent so much, like it's a lot of money when you're going 4 times a week. And I remember I asked for an extension for 3 days so that I could just get my last class in on that one pack. You could look at the thing, I was going to buy another one, and they said no. And I just remember being so like devastated. Like, I don't ever ask for anything. I've been coming for 18 months. I'm so like just that one time, can I just have like 3 days? And so I think from a flip side, it's amplified that side of the business that, but yeah, you also can't give either. But in the context of COVID, it does need to be taken into consideration on how you're making your instructors and your clients feel when they're trying to do the right thing.
I love that. I think there are both sides of the coin there, that you said that, when you're getting all of these requests and your inbox is full of people asking you, can I late cancel? And you're rolling your eyes going, damn it all to hell. Like, no, you can't late cancel.
Yeah.
But actually it's not the same person asking you 100 times. It's 100 people asking you for the first time. And that you need to take that into consideration. You look, is this the first time this person's done it? If the answer to that is yes, then maybe it is the right time to be a bit lenient. If it's this, actually, no, this is the 4th time this month. This
you
person's
go, no. Yeah,
like,
you
no,
absolutely.
sorry.
There's boundaries for a reason, and you definitely, it's just investing that little bit of extra time to looking at the client individually and assessing whether you are lenient or if it is actually no. Like, and it's usually the no's are like, no. We've got, sorry, you haven't followed. You clearly know the rules, and
Yeah. Well, feels like we're reaching our conclusion.
We are.
yeah.
Thank you for
It was an
coming
awesome
in.
chat. Thanks.
Thanks for sharing all of that with us, Laura. I'm sure that's going to be really helpful to a lot of our listeners, and maybe they've also been through similar. So reassuring as well. It's always nice to hear the story from someone else.
Yeah, very relatable, I think, to everybody in the world right now.
So don't discount your service when you go online due to COVID, due to it being Matt. I think that's, would you agree?
Yeah.
Like, keep doing what you were doing, just do it online.
Precisely. Bring your value just to the screen.
And every extra reformer is $75,000 a year.
Also, depending on
Step
your
back to step
studio
forward.
and your insurance and all the different things surrounding that, which will be everybody's individual setup, hiring out your machines, great financial input to the business if you're closed for a long period of time. That's all I'm going to say. That paid the rent. So,
Awesome.
yeah, hot tip. in the conclusion.
Thanks for joining us, Laura.
Thanks, Chloe. Thanks, Raf.
Thank you. Thanks, Chloe.
Thanks.